Hey, how's it going? This is Dan Friedenberg for ChessWithInvestors.com. This is the final advanced bot from the Chess.com bots that are perennial. They're always there, all that kind of stuff. They start off with the basic ones, like the beginner ones, then they have the intermediate, then they have advanced. There's a whole bunch of them. If you have the paid subscription and all that kind of stuff, you can access all of them. And this one here is the last 2100. There's only a couple of 2100 rated bots on chess.com. This is Oscar, who is from, is that Sweden? I think it's Sweden. Yeah, it's Sweden. Okay, so let's get started. It says that my accuracy was 87.7 to Oscar's 83.7, and the eval bar shows that I was basically in a controlling lead the entire time. It says I made 3 mistakes, 0 blunders, 0 misses, 2 inaccuracies. So I consider that a strong game as far as how I'm going here. Now I'm going to try and pay attention to, if you look right, no, sorry, wrong way. If you look right here, you'll see there's an eval bar, as they call it, this white and black line. So keep an eye on that to see how I'm actually performing. So let's get started. The first move, once again, NF3. That's the one I like to do to find out what the other person's going to do. He comes out to basically say, I'm going to either put this pawn out here or that pawn out there. So I say, okay, I'll take that spot. He brings his knight out. I end up preparing to fianchetto once more, and he says he's going to fianchetto as well. And so just we're clear. That means the bishop's going to go here, basically hoping to scoop up this rook eventually, and he's doing the same thing over here. The other advantage of fianchettoing is it means that you can castle your king really quickly, which I'm sure we're going to see. So the bishops come out. I end up taking some extra space here with the c-pawn. This is a bit like a queen's gambit. He castles. I bring my knight out to protect that square so I can put a pawn out on it. He brings this one out here, basically threatening there, which I, of course, could take back. But instead, I'm moving it up here, even though it means as soon as he decides to move this knight, perhaps to over here, then that opens up the threat here. And I can take back with the pawn. But he does this, which is a bit of a crazy move because I can do en passant right here, and that's exactly what I do. Now, of course, the computer hates that. You can see on the eval bar, it went from me being up almost an entire pawn to not being to being a total draw, and it's suggesting that I should have castled. But he ends up taking the pawn back with the bishop, bringing that out into the middle, and I move this bishop out here more to just like take up a bit of space. I know that he's probably not going to do that, especially because I could end up taking with the knight. The idea being, I'm saying, like, what sort of dangers are there for this bishop? This pawn is now gone, so there's no way to threaten the bishop that way, because bishops go diagonally. This one, can't get anywhere near it. But it also sets up for me taking this pawn with my queen to force a trade of queens and simplify the game very quickly. He moves over here for whatever reasons he chooses. I decide, okay, well, I'm going to simultaneously support this pawn that was hanging. See, a second ago right here on the next move, the queen could take this without any fear of getting captured. But if I do this, then I am supporting that pawn right there. It says I should have moved it up instead, but I like that because it also threatens the queen. He ends up moving right here, which isn't a big deal because I am supporting that knight. However, the advantage to what he's doing is it's threatening this pawn twice like that, but this is also check already, so I have to do something about that. And so what I do is I move my knight over here, which protects that pawn. This is already protected. The queen is still out of harm's way, and so it says that was a great move because it's saying there was only one good move at that particular point. So he moves his bishop over here, saying, hey, I want the horsey. And between the queen and the bishop, that's totally conceivable. But instead, I'm saying I'm going to protect my horsey with a pawn. And he blunders and takes it anyway. And I say, okay, I'll take that. And he moves his rook over here, which it calls an inaccuracy. In other words, there was something better it could have done. It says that this knight here was the best move for the computer, but I'm fine with it making mistakes. So I move my rook over because it's covered by my knight and my queen, and attacks his queen. He moves over here to get out of the way, which is fine, and I take this pawn because now this rook is stuck and I'll be able to scoop it up next. Next up, he moves this knight out of the way. The reason being is that way when I take the rook like that, his other rook will end up taking back, so it's not a complete loss. But I take the rook, he takes back, and then I go, okay, I'll gobble this pawn right here, even though it says that I should have castled first. But as you can see already, I've got a pretty big advantage here according to the evaluation bar, almost 4 pawns. He moves his knight over here, which doesn't improve things for him at all, even though this knight is pinned. In other words, I can't move it because of this queen attack. Whoops, this queen attack right here. But I support this knight once more with the bishop by moving that right there. He moves the rook over here. It's a decent enough move because when this knight moves, then there's some pressure here. And I say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and threaten the queen with my rook. And the rook is backed up by this pawn and this queen. It says that the computer says that I should have castled, but whatever. The queen moves over here. That's the computer's move, so whatever. I do this to do a couple of different things. First thing is that it is taking a knight. It also reveals an attack on the queen. I'm more than happy to trade queens at this point because of how they're kind of all up in my business, and that's no fun. So the computer takes the knight. It says it should have traded the queens because I suppose it's because then I wouldn't be able to castle, but that's what it decides to do. So I move up like this because there was a threat right there against the rook, but it says I should have castled because then the rook wouldn't be there to be attacked by the queen anyway, and he scoops up this free pawn. And I say, you know what though? I got my bishop right here, so I want to trade these rooks because I'm already up 3 points of material, as you can see down here under my name. And so he ends up taking back just like that, taking the rook, and I'm saying, okay, that's an okay trade for me. So I take that back. He moves over here. Now, of course, my bishop is hanging, so I decide, you know what, I'll move my queen over here to back that up, but also to focus on this pawn in case this knight ever moves. And my opponent gobbles up the pawn that was sitting there, which is a decent move. I'm still up 3 pawns according to this. Now I do the best move, which is to move my king over here to protect this pawn. Basically, it's a really safe spot. It also connects my rook to my queen, which is pretty sweet. And he says, okay, well, I'm going to scoop up this pawn too. So my advantage is now down to a single pawn difference. So I bring my rook over here, threatening this this knight, sort of, because the queen is covering it, but at least it gets it out of the way. I believe it's saying I was better off moving like that, because then when I move the rook over, I'd have a stack, but whatever. Queen moves over here. Again, it's computer, so I'm not going to try too hard to interpret what it was thinking, but I'm focusing on what I was thinking. So it says that I should have gone here. Oh, okay. I guess the idea is if I go over here, then I could take this with the bishop. But like oh, right, yeah, and then end up going here. Right, and if my queen's there, then when he blocks with the bishop, I'd be able to take with the rook. So that's a lot of moves ahead, but whatever. So computer does the best move, hiding over here. I go right there to fork this and this. It says that this move would have been better. That probably is because this is a dark squared bishop, and there might be some sort of way to turn that into something. I really don't see why it wants here instead of the other, but maybe that has something to do with it. Yeah, I guess the knight ends up, yeah, oh right, yeah, the knight covers that square, but this can't be covered by the knight. I think that's why it says that was a better square for my queen, but it's neither here nor there. Yeah, so once again it's saying going down there for the exact same reason, but you know, I was doing that because I figured over here I'd be able to get something. And he decides to move his pawn, which is doing me a favor. That gets me up to 4.3 centipawns or pawns worth of advantage. It says I shouldn't have traded. I should have gone ahead and done that, but I figured, you know, with my bishop and my rook, I should be able to beat his knight and bishop and scoop all this stuff up. He takes the queen back on the exchange. I move over here. It says I should have gone here. I'm not seeing it. I don't understand why it says show follow-up. Actually, no, hang on, that's not what I want. I want to hide follow-up. I want to hit best. It says to do that, and the reason why it doesn't even show why it's the best. It forces him to go over here, apparently. I don't know, whatever. That's the problem with listening to computers with chess. Sometimes the stuff just makes no sense. And I thought that was just a limitation of humans. It's sort of not. Basically, sometimes computers will choose moves that 8 moves ahead, it seems to have some sort of advantage, but that doesn't mean that you'd be able to understand the position in 8 moves anyway, but that's neither here nor there. So he pushes this pawn ahead, which was actually one of the things I was planning for. I knew that if he pushes this pawn ahead, because my rook is right here, I'll go back to this spot. I moved over here instead of right here, which some of you I'm sure are thinking. The issue is that if he pushes right here, this is covered by the knight, and so I wouldn't be able to take. But if I go here and he pushes the way that he did, then I can go over here and I know I can take this pawn, because even if he moves, it won't work. So he goes there to cover it, and I say I'll make that trade, no problema. And then I move to block the check that it creates. He moves over here, which is a pretty mid move, if I do say so, and then I scoop up that other pawn. So now I have to be real careful not to do this move, because the bishop would be able to take my rook, and my chances of winning would be much lower because he'd have a bishop for my extra pawn. But I move over here to move right there, because it takes 2 moves to get into position. See, now he's going to do exactly what I'm saying. To threaten, but that won't work. So now he is basically at a standstill with that pawn basically stuck there. Otherwise, it won't be protected by the bishop. So I move over here to stop the advance of the pawn and also stop this move, if he can pull that out ever. And so then he starts saying, okay, well, I better get my king into the action. And I say, I better get my king into the action, coming over here to attack that bishop. And that's exactly what I do. It recommends going over here instead. Maybe that's to slide up here and pick up these pawns, but who knows? So I go over here to threaten the bishop. He backs up over here, and I go, you know what? I like having this wall of no-go zone for the king here. So with these pawns here, there's no square that it can approach, and it's just a shape that I like using. So then I move closer to threaten the bishop. Basically, this is the move that guarantees that I'll be able to scoop up this pawn, because he can stay there and lose his bishop, or he can move and then I scoop up the pawn immediately anyway. But he ends up bringing this pawn down here. This is one of those ones where you have to think about it, but this is how I'm figuring it out. I go, okay, if I move up here, then that means this spot is a no-go zone, and these 3 continue to be a no-go zone. So I'm like, okay, that's decent enough. So I move that, and the computer approves for once. So he moves his bishop over here, and that allows me to take this pawn and threaten this bishop at the same time. It's also kind of nice, because that means these spots I said a second ago were covered by these pawns, and this is also covered by my rook now, as is these. So this king is really restricted. So anyway, I move my king over here, the idea being that if I can get this rook to move, or sorry, this king to move, then I can scoop up the bishop. He ends up moving this pawn, which is kind of a waste of a move, but the bigger thing is now I can move my rook over here so that I can pick this up for free, because he's not able to take back with his king because the king's too close. That didn't work, so I move over here for check, covered by the king. He moves up here, and then I end up going, all right, well, let's start getting these pawns into the action. I move this up here because if he takes, I take back, and then I've got that square right there for possibly a beautiful ending, or maybe even like that, covered by the pawn. Let's see where he goes. So the bot moves this pawn out here to support. I move up here for check. He moves over here to run away. I pin the bishop to the king. So in other words, the bishop isn't able to move because that would reveal a check. He moves over there, and I go right here because there's no attackers on the rook. The idea being I can come over here and then I can scoop up the bishop. I can't just go sideways because the bishop is covering that square. He runs away, and I move over here, which apparently was the best move. So then he moves right here to stop me from picking up this pawn. That's fine. I move right here to threaten the bishop, as well as threaten that check. He moves over here to defend. I go check-orama. He moves over here. I scoop up the pawn anyway because I'm like, okay, I've got all these different pawns. I'm all up in his business. These guys are absolutely clogged. They're not going anywhere. So that's why I'm okay to make the trade. And he does what's apparently is the best move and does not take my rook. And that gives me the opportunity to move this guy over here. Now, if you don't know your checkmates, one thing you might want to know is the king is covering these 3 squares. Okay, so that means the king can't go any of these 3 directions. It can go side to side. If you have the ability to put a rook or anything that attacks files on that back row with the king right here, that's a mate, even if you have other things going on. So that's what I was up to. That's why the computer liked it. He moved over here, which is fine. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to scoop up another pawn. It says I should have just went ahead and pushed that pawn up. It says, okay, well, I'm going to threaten this pawn right here because there's a rook behind it too, and I avoid that attack and say you can go ahead and still have that pawn because you've only got 1 pawn left. I take that one based on sheer principle. The computer hates that. I ended up losing a bit on the eval bar for that. He moves over. I move up like that. I think that was to stop. Yeah, I think it was to stop the bishop from moving right here when I move that up and forking them both, even though I'd be able to take them. But I move this pawn up to take off more space, so now all of these squares are a no-go zone for the king. He's only got this to work with. He moves back to, which is the best move, and then I go check. He moves over here. Apparently this was the right move, which was sacrifice. Oh, okay, yeah, it's because I end up promoting afterwards. He does that. You know, like my next few moves are a little bit sloppy, but what I'm doing is I'm doing what I can calculate in my head to figure out that there's definitely a way for me to convert this into a win. So I'm really using my extra material as an advantage. So he moves here, which is I should have just taken that and gone like that. But whatever, I did that instead apparently, and then we get check, and then he moves over here, and then I gobble up the bishop finally. Now I'm concerned about stalemate, which is where the king has, the opponent's king has no legal moves, so I'm making sure that I don't do something stupid where he can't move anywhere because a stalemate is a draw. He moves over here, I go check with my promoted queen. It actually is kind of funny because it said that that was a better move, probably because it could go that way. Anyway, so then check and check over here and check, or that's not check. This is turning into a ladder. A ladder is when you have 2 pieces that that can control an entire file. Okay, like this. Or sorry, this is a rank. And so the idea is you just step on alternating spots here, but you can just see it. So he moves over, so this one goes down like I'm saying, then this one goes down here, and then this one goes down here, and that's mate. And that is the final advanced bot on challenge mode. I now have all of the intermediate, beginner, and advanced bots beaten on challenge level, and you can try it as well. I should remind you that this episode is sponsored by Cardinal Financial Consulting. They focus on financial services for alternative investments, so that means family offices, people who focus in real estate, that's venture capital, that's private equity, that's any kind of hedge fund, anything like that. He also has services for solopreneurs and smaller time investors that are highly affordable. But if you've got a bigger enterprise and you want a CFO that's fractional, that's a whole lot better. And having a better understanding of compliance, like the big boys at the big banks do, that's basically what you're getting from them. But if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you check out chesswithinvestors.com. On the sidebar, I've got this one video series called Improve at Chess Reviews, where they're only 5-minute long videos, and it goes through entire games just like this. But they're simpler games because they're not against 2100 rated bots like this one right here. There's when you get to the higher games, there tends to be more grind. Basically, they won't be as nice when it comes to end games, and so like finding that set, mate. You really need to find something that's forced, or else they'll find some way to weasel out of it. Whereas typical games, they'll end abruptly, or there'll be some fireworks or something like that. So chesswithinvestors.com is where you can check out more of that. But that's all I've got for you today. I hope you check out some more episodes. If you want to appear on Chess with Investors, which is where I play chess with investors over a live game of chess, and we talk about whatever we're investing in, what kind of strategies we're looking at right at that particular moment, what kind of trends we're seeing, then you can connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Dan Fredenberg. I'm really, really easy to find on LinkedIn. It's where I spend all of my social media time. So I hope you'll DM me and we'll have an episode sometime. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.
My background has been in alternative investments for the past 20 years. I've seen just about every type of fund, worked on the accounting and operations side, and even at some of these big banks that I worked for, worked on a lot of projects behind the scenes to really hone my craft and, create Cardinal Financial Consulting and help people set up the right structures, handle the accounting and operations behind the scenes, and really take that away from the CEO's responsibility to make their lives streamlined. Sorry.
Oh, hey there. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you are into chess, if you play chess and you're an investor of some sort, real estate or otherwise, well, you can be on the show too. I know, right? All you have to do is connect with me on LinkedIn. My name's Dan Fredenberg, so I'm super duper easy to find on LinkedIn, where I spend most of my social media time. But if you're one of those people who just don't play chess, don't pay attention to him. I don't judge. All you have to do is go to dandoesdeals.com and you'll find the Chance Encounter series, where you're welcome to be a guest on it, where you can share your core competencies that you're likely to contribute to a GP team or a JV. You don't have to be doing syndications. And we'll talk about your buy box and stuff like that. It's easy peasy. It's like 15 minutes long to record, and there are no real fastball questions. Just tell the truth and everybody will be fine. And if that's not really your thing, dandoesdeals.com, it also has the way to meet more, join more people, add more people to your investor list, your different deal sponsor operators and KPs and passive investors, all that kind of stuff. I'm probably repeating myself, but I'll give you the rest of your day. I appreciate you watching Chess with Investors. See you next time. Bye.